Hello friends and welcome. Today I'm going to give you a quick guide to Grimstroke, who is one of the best supports in the game right now, but disclaimer, requires a little bit of team coordination to be decent. The more coordination you have, the better and better he is. If you have absolutely no coordination, kind of iffy picking Grimstroke. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to give him a go, but if you do decide to try him out, he is very strong. The most common Grimstroke build for either position is something like this. Level 1 Stroke of Fate allows you to secure range creeps as well as harass, plus your auto attacks weakens the enemy so that at level 2 you can potentially go for a kill attempt with Inkswell. At level 3, you usually just take Inkswell again to make it stronger. If you really need the silence for kills, you can take Phantom's Embrace at level 3, but in general, this is a lot of mana to use at once as a kill attempt combo, so unless you really need the silence against a hero like Faceless Void or Weaver, I would wait till level 4, where you have just a little bit more mana. Sometimes you also have like the Healing Lotus at that point, which will give you more burst of mana. It's more time to buy like more mangoes, build up more stick charges, things like that. So generally level 4, then you max Inkswell. It's just a very strong spell right now. It'll also combine with the Aghanim Shard. You will probably buy that early rather than wait for the Tormentor. Some games you can wait, but the Shard plus having this maxed out is just very powerful right now for the heroes that are meta, so that is the most common build. If it's a game where you need the silence, and most games there's someone you want to silence, Phantom's Embrace is usually taken up to level 3. The reason you don't actually need to max it is because the duration of the silence does not change as you level this up. It is always 5 seconds of silence, but the Phantom can be killed. I know it says 6 and 9 attacks. That is for creeps. For heroes, it is 2 attacks and then goes up to 3 attacks at level 3, but you'll see from level 3 to level 4, that amount of attacks does not change. So you can just leave it at level 3. If the silence is critical, and like everyone needs to be silenced this game, you can take it up to level 4 to reduce the cooldown in case the Phantom's Embrace gets killed, but most of the times you're hoping for it to last the full 5 seconds, in which case the cooldown is refreshed, so it doesn't really matter that it's 24 versus 18 seconds. The most important thing is the amount of attacks to kill the Phantom. So then after 3 points in Phantom's Embrace, people go back for Stroke of Fate. This increases the damage and reduces the cooldown only to 5 seconds, so you can throw it out a ton in team fights, as well as split push around the map from out of trees. You can just like throw it, push in waves. The slow goes up to 80%. So lots of value in Stroke of Fate. That's why people usually max it and then take the last point in Phantom's Embrace. If the silence isn't that important, or you just need more wave clear, the enemy is pushing into you a lot, they have a lot of illusion heroes, zoo heroes, then you can max Stroke of Fate first and then take the Phantom after. I would take the ultimate whenever you can, even if there's not a lot of single target spells on your team. The leash lasting longer, as well as having a lower cooldown and higher cast range on this ability, is usually pretty worth it, so I would take it every chance you get. For talents, you can usually take these at 10, 15, 20, and 25 because all of them are pretty good. The 10 and 15 combine with your Inkswell Max plus Aghanim Shard build, so they're just really good talents to take, and you can take them pretty much as soon as you can. I would say you can delay it if you run into a game where you thought you were fine, and then suddenly you're really losing, you really need wave clear, and you need to get points in Stroke of Fate as quickly as possible. That is when you can do this and delay your talent till later, but in most games, hopefully you can just take them at 10 and 15. Level 20, it depends on the game. 3 hits to kill. This is actually just 1 hit for heroes, so it goes from 3 attacks to 4 attacks. Most games, I would default to this, especially if the silence is important. If it's not important, or you are in a really bad spot, your barracks are falling, you've been mega creeped, you're just like holding the base, then 1000 Stroke of Fate cast range helps a lot with that. It makes the cast range like ridiculous, so if you want to take this, you can. And then in the same way at 25, if you're just playing around Inkswell Radius makes it huge, so it's really good. But if the enemy has tons of aggressive dispels, so like Nullifier, Enchantress is in there, right? Those kind of items, Disperser, then Inkswell can actually be removed from your allies. If that is an issue, then just getting more Stroke of Fate damage can work out. A more aggressive version of this build is to take Inkswell at level 1. I would only do this if you think you can get a kill at level 1, either at a bounty rune fight or your level 1 kill attempt combo matchup, whatever, is just so good you think that's all you need. But if you don't think you have a good chance at getting a kill, I wouldn't take it. I would go with Stroke of Fate. If, again, you think you can get a lot of kills, but you need the silence, you can take Phantom's Embrace at level 2, and then probably back to Inkswell at level 3. If all you care is, like, getting kills, then you can max Phantom's Embrace by level 5, or not max, but you get the 3 points to increase the amount of hits, and then after this, I would recommend like going back to Inkswell and then sometimes taking the last point in Phantom's Embrace, totally skipping Stroke of Fate. This is straight up go for kills, and you need the silence, and you can just keep doing this. Most of the time, one value point in Stroke of Fate is pretty worth it because it does have a significant slow, 50%. Even though it's only 1.75 seconds, it's still a lot. It's a fairly low cooldown ability to like throw it at the start of the fight and then throw it again to finish off the kill. So most of the time, I would recommend at least 1 point in Stroke of Fate. But if you know what you're doing and all you care about is shutting down like this enemy, Weaver, Anti-Mage, whatever, and you're just like, kill, 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 like this is the build for you. Or if the silence isn't as important, then you can probably do something like this or something like this. Now, if you're having a really rough game and kills are not happening, then you can actually max Stroke of Fate first for your best wave clear. That build is going to look something like this, and then from here, probably Inkswell next, but you know, depends on the game. Maybe you need the silences, you take these points first, then go back for the Inkswell. Most builds, you're maxing Inkswell first, but this is a very defensive passive. I have to stall the game out, and I just got to clear creep waves. This is a good generic starting item build for Grimstroke, but you can adapt this further based on how you think the lane will go. If you think you can get a lot of kills based on your spells, then that is going to cost you a lot of mana because your combo is so expensive, and you like refresh your silence, so you got to cast it again. So more mangoes, I'd say starting with 2 of them, swap out like some Iron Branch, buy more clarities and more mangoes as the game progresses. You get the bounty rune gold, stuff like that, because you need to have all your mana to use your combo as well as your ally. You need them to have mana as well. So when you get mangoes, you can use it on yourself or on your allies so that you can kill whenever the opportunity arises. If it's not looking like a very aggressive lane and you're just gonna have to poke a lot, I'd pick up 2 sentries to play the pole camps, as well as pick up more like Iron Branches, a Circlet, Fairy Fire. Grimstroke has a very long attack range, so you can just play a more passive game, just keep whittling down the enemy to keep them, you know, a little bit low so they don't want to play too aggressive, and you just get through the laning stage. Eventually, you're gonna leave that laning stage, go play with other people, and then you can, you know, look to be more aggressive. In that laning stage, when you're not going aggressive, just look to attack a lot, play the pole camp, so you don't need as much mana, but you still want some, right? Especially if you're going to use Stroke of Fate to secure as many range creeps as you can. Buy a little bit to be able to sustain that, but you don't need as much when you're like, Stroke of Fate, Inkswell, Silence, Stroke of Fate, Silence, right? That is a lot more mana. Oh, and of course the Blood Grenade, because we're looking to be aggressive, but like I said, in a more defensive lane, swap out that Blood Grenade because you're not really going to need it, pick up more Iron Branches, that's fine. Early game, Boots, Wand, pretty standard. Feel free to throw in like the Raindrops if you think you need them, Quelling Blade versus Natures, stuff like that. From there, Arcane Boots, we said you had a lot of mana issues, so Arcane Boots will help, as well as keep your allies topped up so that, all right, we all need mana for these kill attempts, so Arcane Boots, great to keep up that tempo. Aghanim Shard will buff up your Inkswell, as well as make it a strong Dispel, which is part of why it's so useful. You just throw on your ally, you tell them to go. You can either use it aggressively to stun the enemy when you need to, or your guy gets stunned, so you then remove the stun from him so he can keep chasing. Just a lot of utility with this shard. It is worth buying prior to the Tormentor if you're having a good game, but if there's not so much aggressive need, there's not so much need for the strong Dispel, you can delay it, see if you get the Tormentor shard, and if not, then go back for it. But don't be afraid to buy it. Like at TI, people are going like Brown Boots shard sometimes on Grimstroke. I think it's pretty viable if you need it, but ideally you're having a better game, you get like Arcane Boots and then get the shard. From here, you want to consider how good Soulbind is in the game. Sometimes you have someone like Doom on your team. That is a very powerful single target initiation spell, and he would love to get double value from you with your ultimate, but he can't wait for you. Like if you're slowly walking up like, oh, Anti-Mage, don't blink away, I gotta Soulbind you so that we can then doom you and get like the double value. He's not gonna let you do that. You gotta be there quickly. So in those cases, Blink Dagger next, or maybe like a Force Staff can be very good to allow you to close that gap quickly, Soulbind, and then your team can come in and get that double duel, double doom, double like Hex, Shackle, whatever. So when the Soulbind has a lot of value and you need that jump potential, consider those gap closing items. Other games, Soulbind is still good, but they are going to come to you. It's like they're just going to walk up to you. You don't need to jump them. In that case, something like an Aether Lens to give you more cast range, or the Force Staff still works, because you're just going to sit back, they're going to come, and then you choose when to Soulbind. You don't have to get the Blink. You can get like more standard support items as well. Sometimes Soulbind's not very good at all, and then, you know, you don't even need to think about that. You can just think about buffing up your allies in the usual way. You can go for things like Lotus, other usual support items if you think it makes sense. Aghanim Scepter can be a very good item when there's a enemy hero you want to copy, especially someone who builds a lot of stats and right clicks. Someone like Naga Siren, for example, or anyone who builds auras and you can copy, steal that aura. Those are the best cases. If they have a lot of spellcasters, then Aghanims is not going to do so much. Hex can also be a very good item. Double Hex when you Soulbind Hex, especially if you've bought the Blink, that can be a very powerful initiation. Blink, Soulbind, Hex. So this is a good late game choice, and sometimes you'll see people just do like Arcane Shard, Blink, and then straight to Hex because they don't really need any of these other items. For neutral items, anything that helps with your mana or cast range is usually pretty good. Otherwise, I would focus on survivability and like CDR. All right, tips and tricks time. So Stroke of Fate actually provides vision as it travels, but it is very impractical to use in terms of dewarding. I would recommend the best case is if you already have a sentry and you're rechecking a cliff. That is when Stroke of Fate is most useful, and you can just cast through it, catch a glimpse if they have put something on the cliff. But in terms of dewarding, you'll see that that only flashed for a very brief moment. It's pretty impractical to try by yourself. At best, you can tell allies stand near this cliff, and the end of Stroke of Fate persist for a little bit. Right here, for example, you'll see the vision last for a couple seconds. But you trying to do that, you have to Stroke of Fate from so far away. By the time you walk in, it just like isn't happening. So you need allies to already be here if you want to use Stroke of Fate to deward. Like I said, pretty difficult, so mainly you're just using it to check. It's also useful if chasing enemies through trees, because even though you just catch a flash of them, you kind of know which way they're juking around in the trees. Stroke of Fate comes from the left side of Grimstroke where the brush is, so it's not like most spells that just come directly in front. So if I want to hit Axe and I'm standing like a little bit to the left of Ogre and I actually aim like this, you'll notice I completely missed Ogre because the spell comes at this angle. So this matters the most in the laning stage. When people are far away from you, it's not such a big deal. But when heroes are close and you're trying to hit multiple heroes, just keep in mind where the spell is actually coming from. It's on the left side and at an angle. Phantom's Embrace cannot be disjointed with an item like Blink, but if the hero is not there when Phantom's Embrace is supposed to connect, such as Puck using Phase Shift, then the Phantom will fail to latch and it'll set your ability on cooldown. Phantom's Embrace gives 10 gold in experience, which isn't a ton, but don't just throw it out in the early game where that kind of like small amounts matter. It can be the difference of the enemies hitting like the next level right before you, level 3 or level 4, and then killing you first with that power spike. So be a little careful of just throwing this out. It also means the ability goes on cooldown and you don't get the Rend damage. It does the DPS while it's attached, but it only does the Rend damage after the 5 seconds. So there's a lot of reasons we don't want the Phantom's Embrace to be killed. Of course, if you have to go for it, you need the silence, then you just got to do it. It's just a part of playing Grimstroke, but as much as possible, try to pick the best time to use it so that it survives. For example, combine it with Inkswell or any stuns your allies might have, because while they are stunned or disarmed, they cannot attack the Phantom's Embrace, and so you get that full 5-second duration, and then when it refreshes, you can cast it again, and it has no hits on it. So for example, many heroes will not use their escape the second they see Inkswell, so you can kind of like Inkswell up, approach, start building up, silence them when they want to disappear. They try to kill the silence, you stun them, and that allows you to buy enough time that the silence comes back, and then you can throw it out again. The way Inkswell works is a bit complicated, so long story short, when you Inkswell yourself, you are always doing DPS. That is always there. Inkswell does DPS in 0.2 second intervals. Based on how many instances of damage you deal to an enemy hero, it will build up the max burst damage. So at the end of Inkswell, it will do this like 90, 180, 270, 360 max damage if 13 instances of damage hit an enemy hero, which translates to 2.5 seconds next to an enemy hero, but it will count multiple heroes. So if you Inkswell next to 2 heroes, it only takes about 1.5 seconds to reach the max burst damage, and you could activate Inkswell right away to hit that max burst and max stun, because the stun is also based on how long you stood next to a hero. That's why if you like Inkswell stun right away, you'll notice the stun was very short. That is still useful if you need to cancel channels like TPs and stuff. But if you want the full duration of the stun, you need to stand next to enemy heroes longer and then pop the stun. And the more heroes you are near, the less time you need to build the max damage and max stun. For a single hero, it is 2.5 seconds. Inkswell does not count illusions, creep heroes, essentially Lone Druid's Bear, or clones, which is like Meepo and Arc Warden clones, as the instances. So they don't count. They count as creeps pretty much. It has to be the main hero that you are standing next to with Inkswell. Sometimes we panic cast Inkswell on allies, like spamming E trying to get it on them. If you do that, you will accidentally just double cast it right away and cancel your Inkswell. So be careful of that. Inkswell is still a decent farming tool. I recommend you don't put it on the very first creep because he's the most likely one to be targeted by the end. I should just show you. He's the most likely one to be targeted by the enemy heroes and then die, and if he dies, Inkswell disappears. So rather than put it on the very first creep, I recommend you put it on like the second or third creep in the back. You don't want it to be the range creep because the range creep's not going to reach the enemy heroes. Put it on like the second or third creep, like for example this one, or like the full health creep, and that way the DPS will survive the full 5 seconds. You may not get every last hit, but it'll do a decent amount of damage to push your wave in. You saw the burst damage did not happen because these are creeps, not heroes, so it didn't build up any stun or max burst damage. One more time, just drop it on like the second creep and run away. This is how you can push out lanes without showing yourself. When you cast Soulbind, put it on the most important target, of course, but if you can, put it on a hero who is most likely to survive the full duration. In this case, if I were to Soulbind Ogre, he's low health, which means he'll die pretty quickly, especially when we're all throwing out our like single target spells onto the Soulbind combo, and then Soulbind is going to disappear. Let me show you. So I Soulbound him, I now Dagon him, and then he dies. Soulbind is gone. Instead, if I Soulbind Axe, and then we kill Crystal Maiden, Soulbind is still effective on Axe, which means if another enemy hero walks in range, they will then be Soulbound, and then you can continue to throw out single target spells and get double value. In the same way, Phantom's Embrace is refreshed by the main target. So when I Soulbind and cast both of these, if Axe kills his, I cast Phantom's Embrace on Axe. That means the main one is not coming back, which means I do not refresh this ability, even though the one on Lina came back to me. So when you Soulbind and you have like attached a Drow Ranger with 5,000 attack speed and then a Primal Beast who has no attack speed, you want to cast Phantom Brace on Primal Beast. It doesn't matter which one you cast in terms of silencing, it will go to both of them, but he is less likely to kill his Phantom, which means you are more likely to get the refreshed cooldown when it comes back to you. As a support, you typically just first phase pick and that's it. But if you end up second phase or you play party games and you want to consider a little bit more about the draft, some things you can think about on your team. You would prefer melee initiators in your lane. That just makes your life easiest with Inkswell. Someone like Chaos Knight is a fantastic matchup. Wraith King, Ursa, Juggernaut, those kind of heroes. You Inkswell them, you just tell them to go, you throw in your Stroke of Fate, silence, stuff like that. It's very easy to execute. When you have a ranged hero like Drow Ranger, it's much harder because you both want to sit in the back. It forces you to be the one to Inkswell yourself and run in, and that will work sometimes depending on the matchups, but other times they just kill you because you're a ranged hero, you're not really that tanky. So it's not as nice. It kind of makes Inkswell awkward to use until the laning stage ends and you can go play with other heroes. You don't like to lane against someone who can easily deal with Inkswell. So for example, someone who is mobile like Wind Ranger, you try to Inkswell towards her and you try to throw out your silence, she sees it coming, she instantly presses Wind Run before the silence hit her, and she can just run away. Even though she's affected by the silence, she just bolts out of the Inkswell and it's very difficult to get the value. Maybe she's close to you, so you immediately pop Inkswell to get some kind of stun, but it's a very short duration stun. So very fast heroes, very mobile heroes, very fast attacking heroes, you don't like dealing with that. Anyone who has a stun can also be a little annoying. Anyone with a repositioning tool, someone like Mars who can push you away, someone like Venge who can stun you and run away. That makes it more difficult to connect your Inkswell. Not impossible, especially if a hero like CK who has the gap closing, you Inkswell, he immediately closes the gap. That is ideal, but when they have a way to stun and run because they're fast, stuff like that, that is when Inkswell is very difficult to use. Those will be your harder lanes. If they have a Dispel, that is very difficult. Someone like Enchantress or Shadow Demon when he hits level 6, that makes Inkswell pretty much worthless, very annoying to play against. Rubik is very annoying to play against if you want to ban that out because he is happy to steal all of your spells. If he takes Soulbind, he gets double Lift, double Fade Bolt along with all his allies. If he steals Stroke of Fate, it is super long range. Even without the talent at level 20, he's going to be sniping your team, harassing you guys down, shoving in lanes, very annoying. Inkswell, he buys his shard frequently. He'll have it at a longer cast range than you, and it'll be more powerful and a longer stun. Phantom's Embrace is the best thing you could give him, and that is still a good spell for him. So Rubik, very irritating in terms of having to deal with your spells being stolen. Enemy heroes who depend on their spells or mobility but have slow attack speed can struggle versus Grimstroke. So someone like Timbersaw, you can leash him so he can't Timber Chain, you can silence him so he can't Timber Chain, and he has to stand there slowly attacking the ghost. He's not very fast at that. Or you can Inkswell someone next to him, and when he tries to Timber Chain away, you activate Inkswell Inkswell to cancel that. This also applies to a hero like Brewmaster, like Pangolier. You can leash him to someone he can't roll. You can interrupt the like initial roll up. Those heroes don't really like it. Tidehunter usually depends on just dispelling the silence, but when you silence him, it lashes on and cannot be dispelled, so it will stick on the whole time. Yules does not remove the ghost either, so he is silenced the whole time. That's annoying for him. His attack speed's pretty slow. Grimstroke is also good against heroes who have one single lockdown, kind of like Pudge, because you can cancel the channel with the silence, or when you get the shard on Inkswell, you can put it on your initiator or your carry who is going in. They try to, you know, blink, Pudge ult that guy, disable him, blink roar, blink hex, shackle from Shadow Shaman, and you just silence them, you dispel the silences. That's all very good for you. On your own team, many people overthink the need for the huge single target ability with a long cooldown. So now we'll get double Doom, double Roar, double Bat Rider ult. Those are good, don't get me wrong. If you have them on your team, perfectly fine, but do not only pick those kind of spells. It's actually much easier if you have low cooldown single target spells like Wraith King stun, because he doesn't feel like he's wasting his stun if he doesn't wait for you. He can initiate with his stun. That gives you time to walk in, soulbind, and then his stun's so low cooldown, he's like, I get to stun again, I get double value, and that buys time for Lich to walk in and double Q, double Fear, double ult, double Witch Doctor cast, double Fatal Bonds, double Lift. There's all sorts of single target stuns that when you just get 2 of them, it's nice, and it's much easier to work with compared to Doom, Bat Rider, Beastmaster, all feeling like they need to wait for you to blink Soulbind before they can go in. I almost forgot to say, Spirit Breaker is like one of the best heroes you could possibly lane with. So if you see someone on your team pick Spirit Breaker, just instantly pick Grimstroke. It is a super good combo right now. And then final thought, the more melee heroes that are in the game, both on your team and the enemy team, it just makes it easier to play Grimstroke. When it's all ranged heroes, very tough to get a good Soulbind, very tough to get a good Inkswell. When it's all melee heroes, so easy. Any target you choose, double Soulbind, like Inkswell hitting 3 heroes, Stroke of Fate's going through every hero, much easier. If you want to see more gameplay examples of Grimstroke, I uploaded a game I play that you can check out. I will link it in the description, or you can drop by my Twitch stream to see it live and ask questions and all that, because I have been playing him. Like I said, I think he's very good. So that is all. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it helpful. I will see you in another video.